Blog Talk Radio.
Here we go with the main event of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen in attendance, boxing fans joining us around the world. It's time for the bout you've all been waiting for. Finally, it's showtime.
Here, man, we dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We rooting, and we go into that fight just to land on the line.
Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. We are live, and something just is going on weird. God, why does it happen at every start of my show? I don't understand. Okay, there we go. Something's up. I'm not totally sure, but like I said, I apologize. Okay, we should be good to go. My switchboard just kind of fell off there for a second, but I see people still on, and it seems like everything's okay. All right. Anyway, what a weird start. Welcome back to the show, Tuesday afternoon. Hopefully I'm not throwing too many people off. We got a lot to talk about, folks. We got a lot to talk about. Now, of course, we will get to this WBC 168 belt thing with Canelo being announced as the, I was going to say as the mandatory, but he's not the mandatory. Basically, Canelo and Yildirim was announced. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But, there are a variety of other things that we'll get to news-wise. Gary Russell Jr. not only calling out Crawford, which I'll give him credit for, like I have for a while, not Crawford, but just in general, not for calling out Crawford, but just, he has made himself known and been very vocal of late in the last year or so of saying he wants a big fight. So I commend him. Well, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. He has some audio that he wants the world to know about. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about, since the last time we spoke, Loma and Lopez hadn't, actually been finalized. It has now. Sounds like ESPN stepped up. Right away, some people said, it was Lomachenko who took a lot less money, and it sounds like that's not true. But either way, I could care less how it got done. But judging by what Bob said lately anyway, that ESPN stepped up and it got it done. The Charlo brothers beef has my boxing Twitter timeline pumped about it. Their brothers arguing. Some people think it's going to lead to a fight. I don't know how long we're going to talk about that one. Of course, we have fight news as well and some boxing Twitter. Of course, our boxing Twitter segment. I think we're going to leave Glazer alone this week. I know a lot. That disappoints a lot of people. But anyway, we will start in the ring with some recap. We had an upset over the weekend in a woman's fight, huge fight with an upset. Benavidez looked good in the ring, not so good on the scale. A couple other kind of stay busy fights and upsets. And we also had, I told you that we had an upset. Well, we had a robbery as well. Now you can say there's some swing rounds in there or whatever you want to say. But you have to at least admit that it was a scorecard robbery. I mean, come on, Rolly winning, what was one of them 9-3 or even 8-4? We'll get into that. And then, of course, we'll look forward to the weekend. There's a whole lot of stuff going on. Some of the highlighted fights that we'll talk about with some detail is Dillian Whyte and Alexander Povetkin. The co-feature is really solid, too. Taylor and Persone, the rematch from a really tight fight. And also Smith Jr. and Alvarez do damage on ESPN. Porter returns. There is a co-feature on that card that I'm looking forward to. But Porter just in a stay busy fight. So we'll definitely, preview and predict a lot of the fights coming on this weekend. It is just nice to come off a busy weekend and go right into another busy weekend. As a boxing fan, for a couple months there after everything got canceled, there were times when I watched some old fights, but it took me a while before I could really watch numerous old fights for some odd reason. I don't know why. Maybe I was just bitter that it was over. I was missing it and whatever. I don't know what it was, but it did take me a while to come around to it. Maybe I was kind of stuck in watching old NBA stuff, 80s and 90s stuff too. So that could have been it. But I got to say, it is just nice to have, like, either, you're at home watching the fights live, you got plans on a Saturday so you watch it, or you work sometimes on a Saturday like I do, and you come home later and you pop on your DVR and you sit down and get your scorecard out and just, I don't know, it's just a good feeling. People that have been lifelong boxing fans are really into the sport the last 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying here. So there is a variety of stuff we'll get to, but before that, if this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. It streams live at archives. It's basically the headquarters. However, you don't have to just download it right off of Blog Talk like some people do, or listen to it in the browser. You can find the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, which is boxing heavy, but does have football and basketball too. You can find it at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, really all across the board. I'm also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network, which can be found everywhere, including Spotify. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. That's thegruelingtruth.com. It's boxing, it's football, it's basketball, it's baseball, it's everything in between. And one quick thing. If you're thinking about cutting the cord, or you have and you're not quite happy, I got something for you. I use it myself. It's called AT&T TV Now. It's live streaming cable, okay? Right now they got some deals, so hear me out. There is a 7-day free trial. Once you sign a contract, there's no annual contract, I should say, once you sign up. You can stream it anywhere. They do have the cloud DVR. The plans start as low as $55 a month. And right now, for HBO Max, there's a free 30-day trial, okay? And if you sign up for AT&T TV Now Max, that includes the HBO Max, but it also gives you a free month of Showtime. So Showtime fans or boxing fans out there, something to look at. Right now, Showtime's only $11 on AT&T TV Now. Anyway, so that's live streaming cable. Check it out. Okay, so we have some things to discuss here. Let me clear my throat here. Just kidding. I just took a sip of water. Well, real quick, Michael Conlan and Carl Frampton were in, just routine, stay busy fights. Conlan looked okay. Frampton, he looked okay, but it did take him a little while. It seems like the last couple of years, if the opponent's a top-notch opponent, he'll look better in the fight. It does seem like there's something missing. I don't know about 130 for him. 126 is probably enough for him, but I have noticed that. It's like getting up for big fights and then maybe not getting up, for certain fights. I don't know what it is, but I have noticed that, like a fair amount. But, he even admitted after the fight, if he's going to fight, if Jamal Herring wins his fight, which he should, that he's going to have to fight better for him. I'm not going to go in much detail there. They won, yada, yada, yada. Supposedly Conlan's going to be in a title fight here soon, or is making his way to, I don't know. I don't totally know exactly what's going to go on with that. But we'll see. We will see, that's for sure. But he looked okay. The opponents, it was just stay busy stuff, which is no big deal, but that's why I'm not going to break it down too much. And I was kind of in and out of it. I really didn't even score many of it. I just kind of watched it and sat back. Now, as far as actually, let's just kind of go card by card, shall we? We'll go with the Showtime card. Travis Kaufman, and Otto Wallin, which I was kind of interested in this fight just to see Otto Wallin come back after a really good performance against Tyson Fury and see how he was looking, a different style of opponent. Was he a favorite to win? Yeah, but Kaufman's a good fighter. He obviously was coming off of, I think he had some shoulder surgery issues or something like that, but he now has some more issues. I guess what I would take away from this fight for Otto Wallin is his ability to show a different style, a different game plan. We know with Fury think about it. He probably went in there and said, I'm not going to outbox Fury. What the hell should I even try to do that for? Why don't I just, try to switch it up and go at him and make it a tough and rumble type fight? And he did a pretty good job at that anyway. Won some rounds, definitely looked better than we had thought. But, for me, I kind of, like I said, I kind of liked what I saw. I mean, Kaufman actually did. It was kind of a feel-out round early on. The jab, a few body shots landed for Kaufman. Maybe you gave him a round. Maybe you gave him two. I don't really know, but most of it I thought Wallin won. He did, or was it Kaufman or Wallin? I can't remember who got the warning for holding the neck and hitting. I think it was Otto Wallin, now that I think about it. But he, I don't know. The first two rounds were close. There was like a late counter left in there that could have counted for Kaufman. And so I thought Kaufman looked pretty good early. He was busy, that's for sure. But Wallin started really pumping his jab, like I said, showing a little bit different, showing a little bit of movement in there, and landing some pretty good hooks as well. Then he really got sharp with the jab where it was landing heavy and some overhand rights along with it. Just started attacking the body as well. I don't know. There was a jab that kind of looked like it kind of hurt Kaufman, right? Like it landed really hard. But then when you kept watching a couple more punches, you're like, well, wait a second. He's like he almost turned his back a little bit. Was it his left arm? Was it his shoulder, his hand? But it was right after he threw a punch. That's what you notice, especially on the replay. And how right when he was throwing his punch, he was like, well, wait a second. And you could tell he was injured, and after that, there wasn't going to be much he could do after that. So, you know what I mean? It is what it is. I can't really it's hard to look into this fight with too much critique because it didn't, it went 5 rounds or whatever. But Wallin was just outworking him. I'm not going to say outclassing him, but he definitely was about to start taking over all the way, I thought. Kaufman, like I said, had some early success, but that really didn't last long. 114-31 was the overall punch stat through not even full 5 rounds. Was it 61-3 or something? Was that the jabs? I think it was on the jabs. Maybe that was the body. No, I think that was the jabs. But it is what it is. Like I said, I take out of it that Otto can fight in a different style than just a bruiser, which obviously helps him. I think just off his performances in the past, I think that performance, I should say, not a bunch of his performances, but I think you got to give him contender level, right now. I think that's fair. I don't think that's any kind of he's overrated just because of one good loss, like some people will call it. I get some of that, but to be honest with you, he looked pretty good. Now on to the controversial fight here between Rolly Romero. Rolly came in, 11-0, something like that, and Jackson Marinez. He was 19-0 as well. He had the reach on him too, 69-66. I remember jotting a note of that. I gave Rolly the first round because he was aggressive. He was throwing bombs. You know what I mean? He really was. A few jabs, but mostly bombs. Marinez he was able to counter nicely early in spots, but not enough. But then it literally went a few rounds at least where it was all Marinez. I mean, the jab, the counter, a jab left hook. He was sticking and moving. He was in pretty much complete control. Rounds 2 through 6 at least. Landed lead right hands all day long. He was doing his thing. Now, was he separating himself punch stat-wise where he'd be landed, 25 shots and Rolly only landed 5? No. But does he need to do that, though? Does he really need to do that? Or can he just win the fight by landing the better punch and showing defense? Now, the 7th round, the pace pretty much slowed, but he was still in control. I do give some credit for Rolly in the second part of the fight, though. The 8th round was a two-way round, but I thought he landed the better shots. He landed some really nice overhand rights. The 11th round was very close as well. There was some swing rounds. The 9th round was super fun, actually. But to me, I thought Marinez turned up the pressure, and actually he also started combo punching there too. It was almost like after losing the 8th round, he came right back and put his discipline down. Now, the 12th round, that could have went either way. I think that, Rolly had more success than he had in some other rounds, in most of the rounds, but was it enough? It still felt like he wasn't landing the better shot. I personally had it 8-4 or 9-3. Not for Rolly. The scorecards read 115, 113, which I can at least somewhat live with, but 116, 112, and then 118, 110. Are you fucking kidding me? The punch stat was 103 to 106 in favor of Marinez. He threw more punches too, 629 to 509. Neither of them were super accurate though. Both of them under 20% landing, so that's where it wasn't necessarily this action-packed fight. You know what I mean? But dude, I can understand. There are a portion of the fans, and I think it's when I say majority, I don't mean 80%. You just have to be over 50%. But more fans do usually they tend to lean with the come forward fighter. If it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be a fight, that type of thing. And it has to come down to who's landing the best shots. Rolly said it himself. Well, I landed the bigger shots. All he was doing was running, but he outlanded you, but he also, threw more than you too. So was it just a pity pad jab? I don't really believe that. But if you don't think this is a robbery, okay, whatever. I'm not the type to throw around the use of the word robbery. I see it so many times with tight fights. I'll see someone say, well, I had so-and-so winning by 7-5, and they'll call it a robbery, and you're like, dude, don't get me wrong. Sometimes there is clear 7-5, wins, and that's cool. But, the least you could say it's a scorecard robbery because I don't care who you're rooting for, who you had money on. There's no way in hell you could find 10 rounds for Romero. There's no way Rolly won. I mean, not even 8 rounds. In my opinion, you got to bend over backwards just to get to 7-5. But at least you're in range somewhat. But yeah, the other 2 scorecards were just ridiculous. 116, 112, 118, 110. And like I said, if you favor the coming forward fighter mostly, okay, dude, sure. But there's no way you could get 10 or 8 rounds out of there. I mean, I'm okay with 7-5. There was a scorecard, 115, 113. The opposite way, I don't see how you can. I mean, it's not like Rolly was landing all these humongous shots or something like that and hurt him like 3 or 4 times. Don't get me wrong. There were some like rounds. I labeled a couple of them that were not much going on, or at least maybe they were throwing, but they weren't landing accurately. So I can understand some of those rounds shading to the other or whatever, but like I said, let's say I just give 2 of those rounds. I'm still at a draw. You know what I mean? I'm still at a draw. So I don't get it, man. I really don't get it. Anyway, let's move to the main event. Before the main event, David Benavidez lost his title belt on the scale. He weighed in at, 170 3/4, so he was almost 3 full pounds over the 168 weight limit. I did hear some folks kind of excuse him a little bit because of, this whole coronavirus thing going on and lack of 100% normal fight week where he only has an hour or 2 to go in there, and train or whatever. But sorry, I got a little distracted. But I don't know, dude. Like, everyone is kind of dealing with the same thing, his opponent including, and I'll say this about Benavidez after the fight, and even talking about it before it, he had at least humbled himself to say, hey, there's no excuses. He's disappointed. He said he had missed weight in 8 years, he said, or something like that, or 7 years. So it is what it is. I mean, we know he's a big guy. We know that, a long time ago, he actually dropped a bunch of weight when he was, turned pro and everything like that. So this is the second time, though, something's coming up in his career that had him dropping his belt without getting defeated in the ring. So do I think that Benavidez didn't train barely at all and skipped sessions and didn't spar hard? No, I don't think that. I mean, he even said, we had a full camp. There's no excuses. He thought that he didn't have to do extra. He thought that whatever he was doing in camp, going hard in camp, that usually does the trick, and he screwed it up. So he said he's going to kind of go back to the drawing board. Whether that means 175, I don't know. The WBC actually ranked him there today, so I don't know. It is what it is. It's his own fault, obviously. I'm not going to sit here and, make up excuses for him because he didn't, I don't care if he only had an hour to do something. Everybody was under the same thing. So that is on him. And another thing that I did like, about what he said was, if I don't get, the shot at the belt next, I'm okay with getting back in line. I screwed up. I'll take responsibility. And that may seem like an obvious thing to say. I understand. But pride gets in the way, especially when you're on the camera. And it's not as easy as people think to be all the way 100% humble because you are embarrassed too, But I think the fact that this is the second time something's happened that it's totally his controlling, or out of control enough. So, it is what it is. But yeah, I don't think he just slacked during camp 100% or anything like that, but it's still his fault. And there's no excuse. And 168 hasn't been super easy for him to make. So it's not a shocking surprise. It's just the amount of weight always is like a yellow flag where you're just like, really, dude? Like, that much weight? Like, okay, man. Like, how did you miss it by that much? So we'll see. You know, now that, well, we still got to figure out. A lot of people just assume that fight's done with Canelo and Yildirim. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as the fight goes, could you give Angulo a round? I'm looking at it. I don't believe so. Benavidez, like he does early in fights, he comes out like minorly patient, somewhat patient with his jab and landing a few right hands. He was taking like a half a step or like a full step back, trying to, evade some of Angulo's attacks, which I thought he did pretty well, jabbing pretty well, starting to throw combinations, especially to the body. I also thought he blocked shots pretty well throughout the fight. By the third and fourth round, he did pick up the pace a little bit, started to get inside a little bit more with some pressure, just landing the better shots. There was some overhand rights and body shots, especially lead overhand rights, that Angulo was able to land, just not nearly enough of them. It was pretty much an easy fight for him. There were some times when Angulo did also force Benavidez to the ropes, and he would do pretty good body work. So I think there is like a round where maybe in the last minute he did that, or maybe 2 rounds, where then you could give him the round just because he stole it or something like that. But I don't know. It just seemed like he was outworking him, outclassing him, better combinations, landing better. Like I said, he actually, in spots, I'm not trying to call Benavidez like, Pernell Whitaker on defense, but he actually did show some pretty damn good defense throughout. But yeah, I did notice there was a couple of times where you thought, well, because Benavidez, the first couple of rounds, he doesn't take it easy, but kind of feels out his opponents, does land good shots, but then he really picks up the pace. And once he gets going, it's like a buzzsaw. He'll throw 70, 80, sometimes more, over 100 punches around and really start to bury the person. And that's what I was kind of anticipating. Now, it ended up happening. It was just happened a little bit different. It was almost like he had these like mini spurts of the combinations I'm talking about. He didn't like have a full 2-minute round or part of a round where he really just threw punches and tried to knock him out. And so you thought there was a couple rounds that went by and you thought, he could probably push the pace a little bit more and get him out of there. And sure enough, in the 10th round, there was like a long series of combinations. Angulo was showing a great chin, but they stopped the fight. TKO. The corner actually did. And he was hurt a couple different times, Angulo, but like I said, he had a chin on him. And it was a great stoppage by his corner. There's really no reason at that point. Maybe you won a round after 10 rounds. You only got 2 left. You're getting hurt. Look at these punch tests, 290 to 51. And like I said, some of that is like the last 3 rounds where it really separated it. Going to the body, 57 to 13. Even the jab, 71 to 10. They both were somewhat active, considering it didn't go a full fight, but 703 to 400 just throwing it. He landed 41% of his damn punches. We're not talking power punches. We're talking about straight-up punches. So a sturdy performance, solid performance, don't get me wrong, by Benavidez, but it obviously gets dampered by, you lost your belt, dude. And it didn't happen in the ring and happen on the scale. And, maybe, I don't know. It's really tough to judge on this one. Maybe he didn't go 100% in camp. Like I said, I don't think he straight up skipped days and stuff like that. Otherwise, I think and he alluded to this, I think you would have seen more evidence of that on the ring. And, when you see him on the scale, he never looks great. He has loose skin. A lot of that is from dropping all that weight, you know what I mean? So it's tough to say, man. I don't know. But the way he made it sound that he's not going anywhere. He doesn't want to, he does not, I'm not saying refuses, but he wants to fight at 168. So it is what it is. Now, we'll talk about why don't we just do that real quick? So the WBC called for a fight between, a lot of folks are like, Yildirim, why would Yildirim be in this? This is bullshit. They're looking at the rankings and all that. It's like, dude, I don't pay attention to random interim belts, really. You know what I mean? I really don't. Or at least I don't count them, the secondary titles, whatever. That stuff's all a mess. But I do pay attention to the sanctioning bodies when they tell you this is what's going to happen. And that's what they did. There was already, on paper, they have it pen to pad. They have a contract, Yildirim. And for those who don't remember, he has this contract from the WBC fight with Darrell. And remember that fight stopped in. Many people thought Yildirim should have gotten the nod, and he didn't. So he appealed, and they said, hey, dude, you'll get the shot next. That does suck. You did fight really well. Maybe you should have won the fight. Here you go. We're going to give it to you because Darrell got cut. So that was always going to be the situation. So now it got muddled, the fact that the Darrell-Yildirim fight happened, that was because Benavidez with the cocaine thing, right? So he's suspended for 6 months. So Yildirim, no matter what happened, he was going to get his shot. Now, I guess you could make the argument if Benavidez lost, if he didn't lose it at the scale, and then he lost the fight, and there are rematch clauses in there. I don't know how that was. There a rematch clause? I'm assuming, but I don't know. But Yildirim was always going to get the next shot, and that's why a lot of people kept saying, planting Benavidez next. It's like, no, dude, it's not. And that's partly why the IBF, who is really usually tight on their mandatories, have been trying. They tried to put Quillen and Truax together to make a mandatory for Plant and whatnot. And now they got another fight to try to make hopefully it actually goes through so he can have at least a decent opponent. But anyway, the WBC Board of Governors voted to order super middleweight title fight. That's what it says, Jake Donovan, BoxingScene.com. Canelo and Yildirim. It says as the hunt continues for Alvarez to secure an opponent for his next fight, they've done their part, basically. What was it? Only 36 to 1. 36 to 1 ordered it. He is the mandatory contender in the division, is Yildirim. Like I said, no surprises there. It's up in the air, though, because, Canelo has to actually, say, yeah, that's a fight we want. And also DAZN, needs to approve the opponent. And remember, he's the mandatory. So will Yildirim, it's going to be interesting what Yildirim does, because he's not in the same exact predicament that Derevyanchenko was when he had Canelo, but then Golovkin was going to be there too, because Golovkin was supposed to get a title shot per contract. I remember hearing about that. And so he said, all right, well, if we go to purse bid, this is what I'm going to get in a purse bid, because it goes off of your, obviously, Canelo's purse. That's what it gets. You get a percentage of his purse, or what it's going to take to make that fight if they actually went to purse bid. So it'll be interesting to see how far they push that, because they don't have a backup plan that's going to pay him $4 or $5 million like a Golovkin. Now, if they had Benavidez, that'd still be good money. And first and foremost, will Canelo allow the WBC to double dip? I mean, he's already the franchise champ, meaning you don't have to worry about mandatories, but there's got to be a sanctioning fee for that. So to get the 168-pound belt that you're going to just drop anyway at some point once there's a mandatory, more than likely, because they'll probably want a different fight. not about ducking anybody. It just makes sense. So what do you do there, you know? And like I said, it goes back to, will he allow him to double dip? Why would Canelo let them get 2 sanctioning fees from him? To me, part of it doesn't make sense. Now, maybe there's something that I don't know, and, you know, that they're not gonna. But then why not? Why take away the opportunity to get Benavidez and Yildirim and get some of that money? You know what I mean? But yeah, this is no shocker. I didn't think they'd call Canelo. To be honest with you, I thought they'd do Benavidez Yildirim. But you know, it's funny, the WBC, who, you know, better be of, has the belt there at 175. They've now put David Benavidez, which, you know, when you're a champ at a weight class below, generally speaking, if you go up, I'm not saying he's going up, excuse me, but if you go up, you generally get a number 1 ranking. That's kind of how it goes. Sometimes if it's like the WBA, or they'll give you an interim, the WBC as well, interim belt or whatever. But he's number 1 now. It goes number 1, David Benavidez, number 2, Gilberto Ramirez. Say, like, why would he be number 2 up there? Jean Pascal, Marcus Brown, Alvarez, Joe Smith Jr. is below him. So yeah. So that's kind of interesting. You wonder if they're like, hey, dude, we'll give you a shot at here, but we're not going to give you one down here. And can you blame him? I mean, it's the second time he dropped the damn belt. So I don't know. I mean, it's funny, though, because before the weigh-in, WBC confirmed that Benavidez, because they did actually have some meetings anyway, the WBC, they said he had the next 2 mandatories would be Yildirim and then the Diamond Belt champ, Callion Smith. So that's kind of that's something new that hadn't been there before that I was aware of. So, you know, who knows, man? Who really knows? It's up in the air, and like I said, it's not like a guarantee that that's how it's going to go down. But with Canelo, right now, according to Dan Rafael, that DAZN's already looking to cut Canelo's money, and it sounds like dramatically for this next fight. Because remember, he was basically almost signed, almost a done deal to Billy Joe Saunders, and they did claim that they had the September fight already wrapped up with Golovkin, and Golovkin would get his fight in too. I don't know. Then we also heard a couple of weeks back that they verbally agreed to, in principle, they even, I think it was Carpenter that had the sources, they even showed money for a Cinco de Mayo fight. So it's kind of like, well, you already have him agreeing to fight Golovkin here soon, so now you're going to drop his money before it? And that's pretty crazy, but I guess it's getting pretty tense. Really, I guess Golden Boy and Canelo, the lawyers, are not even speaking to John Skipper. They're actually talking to that Blavet. What is it? What's his name? Blavatnik? I think it's Blavatnik. His lawyers. So they're not even going. It used to be Canelo's lawyers and Oscar or Golden Boy lawyers. They'd be talking, and that's not really a good thing anyway, if that's the only way negotiations can go. But now they're not even, like, they skipped over Skipper, you know, one of the main guys behind DAZN, and they're going right to the guy that funds DAZN and saying, what's going on here? We had an agreement, and now you're going to drop my shit? Like, what's going on? I don't know. So kind of strange. Now, would he, like, let's say he takes less money, well, then, like some speculate, the Yildirim does make sense because he's probably not going to look for a ton of money. Just because, like I said, the back, he can play, you know, he can play hard to get and stuff like that, but I don't know. I mean, if it goes to purse bid, it goes to purse bid. But they may be, my point is, wonder if they offer him $2 million, right? And he's not going to get $2 million to fight Benavidez or whoever else that they have after Canelo. So Canelo, they called it. Now it's up to Canelo if he actually wants to do it. And if he's still kind of having issues, it sounds like the September 12th fight is just a no-go, period, which doesn't really surprise me, you know what I mean? But I don't know, man. It's really shaky. I'll say that. It is very, very shaky. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But, you know, to me, the Benavidez-Yildirim wasn't a horrible fight. I already kind of accepted it because I knew it was going to happen. But yeah, actually, Golden Boy, I confirmed with Roberto Diaz. He's confirmed that he won't fight September 12th. He said they're working on a new date with DAZN. So 2 years in a row now, Golden Boy and DAZN, the combination, whatever you want to blame it on, because obviously DAZN and Golden Boy deserve some, you know, critique here. And back-to-back Mexican Independence Weekend, Canelo's the biggest star in boxing, and you've missed that date twice now. That's pretty freaking ridiculous, dude. But it goes back to setting the groundwork with that crazy overpay. You know what I mean? Actually, they overpaid for shit, dude, and that's what happens. You set the market, and that's what happens. You know, that is what happens. Now, let's keep it going here. Jessica Mccaskill wins a decision. There is some debate. Some people did think that Cecilia did enough. She, you know, what was it, 11-year title run? You know, I thought Jessica did, you know, outmaneuver her. You know, I guess we can go to the come forward fighter and the outside boxer debate. I mean, at least it was a closer fight than the Rolly fight, where he shouldn't have won that fight. So, I don't know. To me, I had it 6-4. I did think she did enough. Now, you know, I mean, Cecilia has been unbeaten for a while. She's a damn good fighter. I did like the locker room humbleness. You know, that was pretty dope. I liked what I saw out of that, that's for sure. Mccaskill went to the locker room, gave her belt, because, you know, she's going to get the belt in the mail anyway, her own belt. But they talked about it. And then you had Cecilia, the champ, saying, hey, I can't wait to see you, you know, take this torch and run with it. And I thought that was great. I thought that was a great notion. And, hey, if Cecilia goes out and this is her last fight, it is what it is. Maybe there'll be a rematch. I would like to see that if she's still wanting to advance her career. Not advance her career, but if that's what she feels like she wants to do. But I had Mccaskill winning that fight. I thought she did the better work on the outside. I favored the better work. Like I said, I had it to 6-4. I would have been not scratching my head if they said Cecilia won, but that was, like I said, at least debatable. And I did see people kind of on both sides of it, and I understand that. That's why I kind of hope, that there is a rematch. To be honest with you, I kind of hope that's the case. I did watch Felix Cash and Jason Weldon. Pretty much played out how I thought it would be. It was fun, though, while it lasted. That's for sure. Weldon landed like a really nice flush left hook in the I think the first or second round. Cash took it well, though. He was a busier fighter, jabbing pretty well, moving kind of in and out. He landed a right hand that stumbled Wellborn in the second. Wellborn did, come back and fire back some good shots. But yeah, it was a pretty one-sided fight. Now there was moments of competitiveness. Don't get me wrong, and there was really a pretty bad low blow in there. I think it was the third round. But yeah, ton of body work by Cash as well. Just unloading to the body in the fourth round. and then up to the head later. In the 5th round, he landed like clean shots early. There was like a mini flurry back by Wellborn. Then he landed like uppercuts and hooks in that flurry. It was pretty fun to watch. But a sharp right hand dropped him, and it was a TKO. He was kind of like leaning over, and he got him with like a really good right hand. And it was kind of like like I said, when he's leaning over, he hit him in the back of the head too. So, but it was kind of, it's kind of the moving target type thing. So, but Cash looked good. Cash looked good, I thought. We'll see where he goes from here. That's on the Sky Sports / DAZN. The DAZN here, though, Madrimov. Was it Yes, Madrimov against Walker. This was a good fight. And this was a really good test. I had Walker winning the first. Well, the first round was close. I thought early and late, probably Walker did the better stuff. Like throughout, some inside work done by Madrimov, though. And talk about body. This freaking guy basically just went to the body. It was pretty funny. But the first 2 rounds, I did actually give to Walker. Flush right hands were landed really well. Late jabs and left hooks. But you did start to see Madrimov kind of turn it up more. Right crosses to the body, in the head a little bit. His body attack. I mean, that's basically what it was. The 3rd and 4th round were just focused on body attack, dude. And I gave him that. 5th round, he won the round. But he was still leaping too much and getting off balance after swinging, and a lot of times swinging and then missing. And so I get his funky footwork style, but sometimes he leaps so much that at the end of a miss or a hit, he's actually somewhat squared up or off balance. So it looks great at times, but it also, like, if you go against a high-level guy, which there's a fair amount of them that are pretty damn good at 154, there might be an issue there. 6th round, he clipped him early, did Madrimov. Then, he almost freaking fell over after he did it, though. But, I don't know. He was kind of off balance and missing again in that round, but he won the round, clearly. It was kind of a slower round. Then I saw Walker win a couple of rounds. I gave him the 7th in the 8th round. He bounced back in that 7th round, landed combos, whipping right hands. And in that 7th round, dude, Madrimov looked faded. He looked tired. He was holding. You could tell he was like, wow, this sucks. I'm starting to, you know what I mean? Even though there'd still be, like, great action in spots, I mean, he had some problems. Let's not, mix words. He definitely had some problems, dude. So, but to his credit, as bad as he looked at times in that 7th and 8th round, and even when he was winning the 5th and 6th round, like I said, he was hitting sloppy. I mean, there's really no way to put it. Whether it's being tired, whether it's a combination of being tired and his style, because his style is kind of sloppy, whatever it is, it was happening. And then in the 9th round, he landed this leaping left hook. And it was right when Walker was pulling out. He was wide open, got caught with the shot, and clearly got knocked out. Now, this ref, and I mean the commission to an extent the corner. I say to an extent the corner because, well, I don't know. I think they should have stopped it, to be honest with you. Because the guy, he could have had what they call a walking concussion. He really could have. I mean, he got hit and he was falling like a tree, timber. And yeah, sure, maybe there was some contact with the shoulder, but that had nothing to do with it. When the ref kept explaining it, it didn't line up. It didn't make any fucking sense. He's like, well, yeah, but we don't know what would have happened. Well, the dude was in timber mode, dude. So what do you mean we don't know what would have happened? He hit the ground, and he was out for a moment. It was one of those where you could start to count, and you look and go, no, we're done. It's over. Like, he may have had a concussion. We don't know. I don't know for a fact. I haven't heard back, but the danger in that. Now, maybe for a split second, his coach was trying to grab a towel and looked up, and his guy had already been hit, and he didn't see how bad he was hurt. Or maybe that happened to the commissioner. He's looking at the phone. He was commenting on something, and it happened, and he didn't see it. But if they saw it, there's no way, commission-wise especially, that they couldn't just sit there. I mean, they did talk to the guy, the ref, but he, like I said, he just wasn't making any sense. And here you got a guy that could have been concussed. Get up, and it's great that he showed a bunch of heart. You know what I mean? Walker did. I mean, once the fight started, he got fucking nailed with a right hand. I was like, oh, shit, dude, stop the fight, please. And several, harder shots, not just in that round, but the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th. I mean, more right hands, and it was bad, dude. A right hand dropped him halfway through the 12th, Body shots, left hooks, combo punching. It was over. And at that time, you're looking and you're like, this sport. By the way, there's 90 seconds left. I see some folks jumping in. 646-381-4990 is the number to call. 646-381-4990 is the number to call to listen to the archive. I don't know, man. That ref was silly, dude. That was silly. And the commission, too. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. I mean, when you go to smaller places that don't, not even smaller, just places that don't do a lot of boxing. And by the way, Tulsa has now had this Main Street, right in the middle of town type feel ring, just because there wasn't an audience there now. But, they've done that numerous times. They did that. Well, they did it for this. They did it for a Fox show and an FS1 show. They used to do it for ESPN Friday Night Fights a couple of times, and it drew pretty well. So my point is, when you have a commission that doesn't have a lot of fights, though, you end up getting this type of product. And not product, but the result, where you're like, dude, what are you fucking talking about? The guy was out on his way down. I mean, did you see him walking around, dude? He was out of it. And if a guy's so out of it that he's got to sit down in the corner, well, you don't see that much. That's not a normal thing. Hey, you need some rest? Yeah. Let's have a stool out there to give the guy a rest. If you need a stool, like, you can get hit in the balls and not sit down. I mean, I guess I've seen some people go on the canvas and stuff and stay there for a while, but I don't know, man. It was dangerous as hell. Like I said, this is a brutal sport. It could be a savage sport, no doubt. I get it. People get knocked out. I've seen a million knockouts, yada, 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 yada. A lot of knockouts. But when you can see the guy's fucked up, and then literally the first time they ring the bell to get it going again, the dude takes a huge shot. It was like, oh, shit, here we go. You know what I mean? I felt bad. I felt really bad. But as far as Madrimov, there has been a hardcore following for this guy for good reason. He's got a pedigree. He's got some fancy footwork. He can get in and out. He's obviously got power. But he's sloppy right now. Let the guy breathe a little bit. Let him develop. And I know that they talked about, well, I think Eddie Hearn said, well, he only had a 4-week camp. But so did Walker have this 10-week camp that we don't know about? I mean, who do you think has better sparring partners? Well, actually, I don't know him. I shouldn't say that. But you know what I mean? It seems like a cop-out. Like, does everybody have a great 10-week camp like everything's normal again? I don't know. I mean, it seems like more people are going to be able to now into these fall camps, and it does matter, what state you're in, obviously. And in some cases, country, right? But to me, I mean, I've seen more than once, I'd say too many times on my timeline, not only some media members said this, but they're already giving Madrimov the 145, 150, 145. That'd be weird if they give him a weight class that didn't really exist. But although that might be Broner's weight class. But 154, they were just handing it over to this guy, and it's like, dude, you're just gonna hand it after all these upsets we've seen. You're just gonna hand them it? Like, that was always weird to me, and I just never do that. You know, that's just not my style to do that. But not only that, but like, now you can't hit the brakes and be like, oh, this dude's exposed, he's done. But yeah, I mean, he did get exposed minorly. If he fought this way against Charlo or one of the top dudes, I think he'd have an issue. I think Charlo's style is good for this guy because Madrimov comes to him. And it seems like people don't come to Charlo as much anymore, especially like out of the gate. But I think that he's got a lot of potential still as a pro. He really does. He just got to tighten it up. Like the leap, I mean, the dude's got power in both hands. It's clear. Like I said, I do like to use like the American term, the juke move on the way to landing a punch. You know, like maybe you plant your right foot, but then you're landing with the left hook, like a little juke. He does these little hesitation juke moves, like he's trying to get open as a wide receiver or getting off the dribble and basketball, but then he'll land the left hook. The problem is, like I said, after that, it leaves him just very vulnerable. And especially like Charlo, who now in the last chunk of years can really he hasn't perfected the come forward game, that's for sure, but he has improved. And his power, sitting down on his punches, we all know that's improved. So to me, I think I'm not going to say a sitting duck because, you know, he is an awkward guy. And even in a fight he looks like he's not doing good in, that awkwardness can just pay off and change the whole fight, and that's basically what happened. But I did see a guy that, you know, I mean, let the guy go rounds too. He hasn't even had that many rounds in his career. So I think he's going to get a lot out of this fight. But I also contribute some of the exposed talk to the opposite way, where they hype a guy too much. You know, you can't just give a guy division when he's 5-0 and he hasn't even fought a top 5 guy. You know, you could sit there and speculate, and I think this guy's going to do it. But just be like, hands down, he's the best. When you see that enough, when fighters get over, you know, rated, they're going to get – it's like Broner. I mean, didn't the Ring Magazine have him at like 6th or 5th pound for pound? Now, we know that was when he was the Golden Boy, of course, but like when you overhype people, and I'm not saying – I mean, he had more fights at the time than obviously what Madrimov has now, but you get my drift. Like, if you overhype people too much, there are going to be some people that just go off after him because they're like, dude, what the hell? It's kind of like that boxing Twitter thing where somebody will say, I really like this fighter, but I hate his fans, so it makes me want to see him just lose to piss them off, you know, or whatever. So it is what it is. But yeah, like I said, I'm not going to go too deep in that Frampton-Conlon. They got the job done. There were some other fights, but, you know, ESPN Plus, there was a lot of fights. I'm not going to talk about every single one of them, but it was a steady weekend. We had a little variety, everything. We had an upset. We had a robbery. We had just a subpar, below average, just poor refereeing and commissioning. I mean, that was bad, dude. I felt bad for Walker. But hey, nobody ever has to say bad about Walker when it comes to a chin or heart. That's for fucking sure. Holy cow. Anyway, I don't know why I just screamed like that. Anyway, let's see what we got. So we'll go a little news, and then we'll get into breaking down Povetkin Taylor, especially Smith Alvarez, Persone Taylor, Gallimore Fondura, Sure, Porter's in a stay busy fight, no doubt, showcase, but I like that co-feature. So we'll talk about it, predict some of these fights coming up this weekend. Like I said, it is busy weekend, man. DAZN, Sky Sports, ESPN, Fox, I suppose FS1 technically. But let's get into some of this stuff here, okay? So real quick, the Charlo brothers are arguing. Some people are saying they're beefing, they're mad at each other. This thing is going to happen. That's what it is. They're going to fight each other on pay-per-view. And they've been asked that question more than once. And they say right away, no way. Now, could there be – I mean, this is boxing, so you never say never, right? You never say never. But, I mean, could it be an ingenious way to get everybody to think they're going to fight just to get them attention? Some people think it's lame that they're doing this, starting fake arguments. I do think that it happened yesterday, but it already happened like 2 separate times. One on the Brian Custer pod, one I think it was just a live IG, and there was a Q&A. And so he was just answering a question, and because they were getting the wrong Mel and Maul in the 54-60 thing. So, because I think Canelo came up. And so, the big Charlo, little Charlo thing bugs Jermel as well. I don't know. They're brothers that argue. They used to have the same trainer. That fell apart. But I'm not going to – I mean, I'll buy it if they were going to do it. Just like the Klitschko brothers, I would have loved to seen that fucking fight. And I would like to see this fight a lot, dude. But I'm not going to bank on it. And but a portion of my timeline are sold that this is happening. They're fighting each other, and it's just like, well, whatever the fuck they're doing, to an extent, especially in the hardcore level, it's working because it's getting people to say some shit about it. Whatever it is, something. So Lopez and Loma is a done deal, which is a freaking great thing. Great. I'm so happy that this fight got, figured out. And I figured once we got to a couple of $100,000, like I was saying last week, I anticipated it to be done, and I anticipated that there'd be a couple $100,000 laid to Lopez, and it would go away. That this fight would happen, and that's what happened. There were some reports that Lomachenko took the less money, but it doesn't sound like that's true. I mean, originally I think he was going to get $4 million, and he took less to make the fight happen with during the pandemic. But I don't believe he actually took less. That's what it kind of seems like. But you did. Steve Kim, Kriegel, they said this. This is actually Lopez Jr. Or actually, this is Junior. It's not Senior. We were going to make the fight happen. Of course, it was just a matter of who gets what. They're throwing out bullshit like Lomachenko put out part of his cut to make the fight happen with me and give me something like $800,000 out of his check. That's false. I hate the fact that people are throwing it out there, making it sound like he dug in his pocket, which is not. I guess it's not true. I guess ESPN is the one that dug into a pocket, which I could care less who the hell, what, where, how, whatever. I could care less. But hey, if the shit, if it got made, it got made. That's all I care about. But yeah, I mean, I did think, last week I mentioned that this is going to be it. It seems like they're going to make it. And this is what Bob Arum said. ESPN stepped up to keep Lomachenko Lopez off pay-per-view. And now a lot of people think the college football season is canceled 100%. And I'm not saying that it ultimately won't be that case. It could be. But if you want to get technical, and this isn't really getting that technical, as of right now, college football is on. It's just the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and, several other, the Mountain West and the MAC and several other conferences are not going to play this year. They're actually trying to maybe think about spring football. So, meaning But if Pac-12 and the Big Ten, see, it's the SEC and the Big Ten runs college football. Now, the NCAA has already said there's not going to be championships, but so they kind of went. But that was they made the decision after the Big Ten made their decision. So it was kind of half-assed. They'll tell a kid that he can't take $100 in an envelope, or you're suspended for this or whatever. We're investigating that. But then when it came to something very serious, they were basically nowhere to be found in a lot of this. But it's not – I'm not saying it won't get canceled, but it's not canceled. And my point is, so any Big Ten or Pac-12 game that was going to be on a Saturday on ESPN or ABC, there's now time open. And is it budget open? Yeah, I think they have to figure that out as far as, how they're going to get that figured out as far as the money goes. I think that's a whole different separate issue, but Bob Arum basically said that they stepped up. He talked about, how we don't have, it's not on ESPN Plus, it's not on pay-per-view. But this is what he said. What I'm most proud of, it's clearly the best fight since the pandemic started. It would have been a major fight even without the pandemic, and now we're showing it straight up, on ESPN, which I'm really happy at. One of the fighters said, well, it'd be, it'd do really good on pay-per-view. I said, no, it won't. People are out at work, and sometimes people watch pay-per-view with 10 or 12 people at home. You can't do that in the pandemic. People are not going to be willing to have big crowds in their homes. I don't blame them. ESPN stepped up to the plate. They're obviously giving me more money for the fight than I normally get for ESPN. So they're to be complimented too. They understand there's a pandemic and, getting a major fight for the country to watch. Arum acknowledged that Loma and Lopez accepted lower purses for their bout than they expected to make. That's what I was talking about there. You can understand if from the standpoint of fans, they were anticipating larger purses because of the revenue loss, blah, blah, blah. They're real fighters, and they wanted to get it done. But you have to look at it from our standpoint. Also, look at the situation. We've been building this fight for 3 years, which I don't see 3 years, but okay. They wanted to make a good buck on the pay-per-view in the gate. We're not going to make anything off this fight, which is okay. At least we're getting it done. So clearly ESPN, Lopez for saying something, but ESPN coming through, that's dope. Now, as far as him saying, no, we want to keep this off pay-per-view, that wasn't the plan. Even for May 30th, even when they talked about after the pandemic had started that it was going to be on pay-per-view. So now he's coming across like every promoter would. We didn't want to do it on pay-per-view. Well, even though he kind of backtracks in that same article, but, he's saying, we can't do it on pay-per-view, dude. We care too much and all that. But we know he just got beat to the spot. And that's how pay-per-view, they didn't want to go a weekend after the Charlos or a couple of weeks before Tank and that. It didn't make sense. So that's really why it didn't happen on pay-per-view. Because they had talked in the summer that it was going to be pay-per-view. So I'm happy, though. As a boxing fan, I'll say it right now. This is their best fight on ESPN. I've been a little, pissed off that they haven't used ABC yet. It's been 3 years since the deal. And they mentioned ABC. It hasn't happened. We got pay-per-view before ABC. However, this is their biggest fight and most meaningful fight on ESPN. Now, the biggest fight was Pacquiao-Horn, obviously, right, for obvious reasons. And, of course, people will say, Rigondeaux and Lomachenko was a bigger deal. Well, it might get a bigger rating. We'll see. It really matters if there's a college football game, which I hope there's a college football game before, so it can bleed right into the broadcast and give it a major thing. I don't really care, though, either way. I'm just happy it's on ESPN. But some people will say, well, Rigondeaux, they were undefeated. Yeah, but Rigo was coming up 2 weight classes, too. That was a big fight, but to me, both of them at a decent weight class, it's I've always said 135. I've not always said it, but ever since he's shown a minor bit of weakness at 135, Lomachenko's not perfect for 135. That we know. 126, 130 fit him better, but it's not like Rigo jumping up, 2 weight classes. So I'm really happy it's done. That's why I was on the fence, because I didn't know how much money he was supposed to get, and now we're hearing that maybe he was supposed to get $2 million or maybe a little more, a little less. Sounds like he's going to get ballpark 1.5. So we got a couple $100,000 more, and the fight's done. So credit everybody, but especially ESPN, because ultimately they did make this. They solved the problem, and it's on regular ESPN. So that's dope. That is so dope. And like I said, I think on paper right now, we don't know how it's going to turn out, obviously. I think it's their best ESPN fight. I really do. I believe that. So Mr. Gary Russell Jr. Good old Gary. Now, I'll give him credit for a couple of things. First of all, the last chunk of time, he's made it obvious that he wants a big fight. And I respect that. Okay, I do respect that. The old closed mouth doesn't get fed. I respect the hell out of what he's doing on that level. Him and Crawford had this little beef from something that happened when they're younger, where Russell hit him in the mouth, and stuff happened after that, but not really. It didn't happen, but we don't know what really happened, if Crawford actually was hurt and had to leave, or he got kicked out, or whatever the hell it was. I have no clue. But Gary Russell Jr. has called out everybody, even if they got a fight or not. He's called out everybody. Like I said, I do give him credit. I've always said, though, I do wish that, he was more vocal before this and not so happy with fighting once a year. I'll say that. But he's doing his due diligence now. His last 2 opponents have been very solid. If you look at it, King Tug and then Diaz, and he's looking for a big fight. So I'm not going to sit there and rip the guy for that. And this is what he said. I'll let him say it. Okay, this is what he said.
No, I don't know. Second conversation with Al Heyman. Second conversation with Al Heyman about Terrence Crawford. It's official that we made an offer, and it's been sent to Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford. Terrence, man, what's up now? Let's go ahead and settle this shit once and for all, and show the fans what would have happened if you would have attempted to fight back when I punched you in the mouth. Let's do this shit in front of everybody and show them what really would have happened, man. Y'all see what it is, man. I'm in it done. This shit real, man. So, once again, all we doing is waiting for a response. So, if the fight don't happen, I want the fans and everybody out here, all the suck-ass, punk-ass haters and doubters and all that that's out here, to understand that it didn't happen because Terrence Crawford didn't want to make the fight.
Now, let's clear up a couple things here, okay? Just because we don't know what the damn offer is. And remember, we know that Crawford has a very healthy minimum. And we know he's not going to budge on it. I mean, he's not going to budge on it he said no one. But, so Al Heyman's sending at least $4 million to fight Crawford and Russell? Or at least, I don't know. I think that's his minimum, right? So, I don't know. But I'll give him credit because if this is true, and it's not just Gary talking, I don't know. But they said, you got the second one, it's the second offer. I give him credit for that part. It's just trying to make it happen. Like, screw it, we're going to send you an offer. Now, is it a real offer? I have no clue. And I'm not going to speculate until there's further proof that it's legitimate. it. But the whole thing of, if the fight don't happen, I want everybody to know that Crawford didn't want the fight. Court. Well, we got to know the offer before we can sit there and say, oh, the fight didn't happen. Oh, it's for sure Crawford's fault. It's for sure Crawford's fault. Because we have to know, and I'm pretty sure we're going to at least know something about the offer, because if this is sent, this is pretty funny. But hey, if a fighter wants something, Al generally delivers. Generally. Not every time, but generally. Especially if the guy's vocal. Well, he's vocal. So Gary Russell Jr., Al sent this guy. If this is true, Al sent an offer to Crawford, to jump up, 30, 35, 40, 4 weight classes? I mean, but as far as making a fight, I think we got to give some credit. Lance Polgemeyer, speaking of Crawford, Bob Arum told me tonight that Terrence Crawford will either fight Manny Pacquiao or Kell Brook in November. There's no mention of Teixeira. So, Speaking of Crawford, though, you had Thurman going off. Thurman wants to fight. But actually, before we get to that, the Pacquiao camp has come back and, said that it's the Crawford fight's not even on the table, nor are there plans of putting that blockbuster fight on. That's what Sean Gibbons said. Bob is just high because we know he likes the herb. Shout out to that. This is 100% nonsense. Arum has been talking about pitting Crawford, with Pacquiao, but he says it's complete nonsense. They haven't even had real talks. So it's probably just Bob saying stuff like, hey, man, we tried to make it, We tried to make it, but there's not a lot of pay-per-view room. And the amount of money you're going to have to give Manny to not have that gate, I don't know. But Keith Thurman said on his live stream, actually it was on Custer too, Brian Custer's podcast, he said, hey, send the contract. I'll sign it live on IG if the money's right, yada, 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 right? And this is Terrence Crawford, like earlier this year in April, saying, Keith Thurman, shut your ass up. You don't know what you want to do, because I bet if the contract was sent, you'd find a way out. So stop playing with my name. That's what Crawford said, and that was in the spring, like I said, in April. But Thurman is saying, hey, send the contract. Now, on the flip side of this, just to hear both sides, this is Bob Arum. Thurman's people called about Crawford, but the money demands are crazy. But it wasn't going to be like $2 million or something. It wasn't going to be. It's a big fight, so there was going to be a lot of money. But this is Keith Eidick. Thurman's people got in touch with me, but they're out to lunch. They have such crazy expectations that don't exist anymore. Their money demands are crazy. They said they were free agents, which I'm sure they are. But again, who's going to pay what they're looking for? I didn't divulge the amount. But I don't know. This is what he said about Kell Brook. Brook is a very good opponent. Brook fought. Spencer gave him a good fight. Yada, yada, yada. So, there's at least activity. And at least like, hey, you want the fight? Well, here's what we need. At least they're being up front. It's better than calling I'll say this, it's better than how ESPN or Top Rank, how Top Rank handled the Danny Garcia offer. I mean, all they did is called his dad. They didn't offer Al the fight, which Al's the guy, who's going to actually, give him detail about the contract. And I always said that you can at least tell money-wise what the money is to Angel, but just to be like, hey, just so he knows what the offer is, and then send it to Al as well. That would have made it seem less than as a press run, because right now it's just a press run. At least Heyman or whoever. I mean, who else would it be? sent out like, hey, this is what it's going to take. And it does seem like they did already talk about Spence and Crawford, not just off because Bob Arum said that, but also Spence. Remember that time when Spence and Crawford were going back and forth and they got on the phone and they don't really go back and forth anymore because they talked or whatever? But Spence was saying you already know what it takes, and I'm guessing that means you got to take 60-40 or something. I don't know, but that's just a speculation off of, looking at it and going, I wonder what it is. But anyway, it was funny. Thurman looking for a big fight, but they also said that's not going to happen, for one. Two, it does look like Thurman's going to be lined up. This is exactly what I thought. Now let's see if the other part turns out. But December 26th, they've done that date, that last December Saturday, or maybe it's not always that last December, but I think it's been like the 21st and the 22nd. They have the day after Christmas. This is actually a little bit different. Fox has a Saturday night scheduled the day after Christmas. So the 26th of December. And it sounds like that's the date for Keith Thurman. So I'm still on the WBA connection. I'm still on the Jamal James is going to fight in December, and that will be against Keith Thurman. That'll be his shot at a huge, huge name. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know that to be a fact, by any stretch of imagination. I'm not trying to act like I do, or I am, but it is what it is. Anyway, like I said, Gary Russell Jr., cool man. You are getting Al to send shit to people, and you're calling people out, and I hope it goes good for you. Like I said, though, he has to be part of this lane. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's pretty obvious because he was sufficient fighting once a year. Okay, so this one kind of took me by surprise, but not really, because it's boxing. But Eddie Hearn, not too long ago, yesterday or something like that, on Sky Sports and then later on IFL TV was talking about AJ's potential fight, and he was talking about WBC. And obviously the WBC has made it known that whoever wins Wilder and Fury, the trilogy, has to face Dillian Whyte next if, capital IF, if they want to keep the belt. They don't have to face them next. And remember, right after Wilder got knocked out, what was everybody saying? Screw everybody. Wilder takes some step aside money. Screw pull-up, screw everybody. Let's get the fight on, That's what they were saying. But now things have changed, and Eddie Hearn does represent Dillian Whyte, so he's got to represent for Dillian Whyte as well. You have to keep that in mind. But what he said is just silly. I mean, he's talking about, well, if Fury dropped the belt, well, Fury would probably drop the belt to want to fight AJ, right? And it's funny because not long ago, Eddie was saying different stuff, right? He's a promoter. Of course, that's going to happen, right? But he was saying, screw it. It doesn't matter. Like, we'll drop a belt and it'll be for, the lineal. I mean, it's just funny. It's just funny. But here's what Eddie Hearn said on potential Anthony Joshua Dillian Whyte rematch. AJ's not going to be dictated to by the belts, so maybe he bins off Pulev and Usyk and fights Dylan in the summer. Anything could happen. The country would stop for that fight. So I'm not going to be dictated by the belts, but I'll drop a belt, or two belts, in a sense, right, to fight for, to fight Dillian Whyte for a belt for the WBC. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't even, it's like, what? So, and you guys were ready to, fluff off all those anyway. in one time he's saying that, right? So if he went right to Dillian and he dropped out of this Pulev fight, then it wouldn't be undisputed. And even if it was undisputed, let's say Fury drops the belt trying to say, hey, I want to fight AJ next. Screw it, Whyte and Wilder, you guys fight, or Whyte, whoever. Okay, that's one thing, right? And that's probably who would beat Wilder and Whyte. Well, maybe not. It kind of matters what happened to Wilder in the rematch. Obviously, if he gets knocked out again. I don't think they're going to go in there with a guy who can punch like Whyte, but who knows? My point is, so then they would say, well, we don't want to fight Fury. We only want to fight Fury if we have all the belts. But we'll fight Dillian Whyte, before we fight Pulev, maybe. You never know. But then he says it the opposite way, too, talking about, well, that would be for undisputed. That's what these belts are so stupid, and sometimes undisputed can be so stupid. And the only thing you got to really look at is lineal. And, of course, that can have its issues, too. But because of when people are like Tyson out of the ring or whatever for a long time or whatever. Or maybe you don't, even the lineal, sometimes the lineal gets put together. Like at 135, the lineal got put together with a fight that shouldn't have been for the lineal. It is what it is. But here's what Eddie Hearn said. And talk about undisputed, but we know that would be just a worthless undisputed. It'd be a great fight, but it wouldn't be undisputed because we know Tyson Fury would be there. But listen, this is what he said.
So pivotal for the heavyweight division. Mauricio Sulaiman has made it very, very clear. The winner of Fury Wilder should fight the winner of this fight. For Dillian Whyte, absolutely, he's waited 1,000 days for this opportunity. But Alexander Povetkin's just pitched up. He could steal that mandatory position underneath Dillian Whyte's nose. But when you look at the bigger picture, the undisputed picture, all Anthony Joshua wants is the WBC world title. He never was worried whether it was Wilder, Fury, whoever it was. But whoever owns that belt is who Anthony Joshua will face for the undisputed heavyweight championship. So we know that the winner of this fight on Saturday night will be ordered to fight the winner of Fury against Wilder. If Tyson Fury does not want to fight Dillian Whyte if he comes through on Saturday, Dillian Whyte will be actually elevated to world champion as interim champion. Now, I don't like that, but what will happen is Anthony Joshua will fight Dillian Whyte straight away for a fight which will be the undisputed championship. This fight.
And see, like, come on, dude. You could talk about undisputed all you want. Yeah, would all the belts be on the line? Well, would they? We know that for a fact. Like, if he fought Pulev, wouldn't you still have one belt that wouldn't be in there? Or would Usyk take the step-aside money because I believe he still is with Matchroom, right? Or at least, yeah, Matchroom to zone. Is that what he's saying? Because it's just silly, dude. It's totally silly. So when Fury knocks out Wilder, you were ready to make that fight. Fuck Wilder. Fuck all these other mandatories. Let's just go to it. Then, he says other stuff like we may slough off that mandatory, both mandatories, and fight Dillian Whyte next. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And it's like, well, wait a second. I thought you wanted the Fury fight. Now it's just about belts. We only wanted a WBC. Yeah, but it still wouldn't be undisputed because you'd have the other belts linger. That's what's so stupid about this. But I get that he promotes his guys. So I'm not saying that he's only got to look at, of course he's going to look at it from that point of view to an extent, but do you see how stupid that would be? I mean, you're telling me Tyson Fury against Joshua isn't a bigger fight than Dillian Whyte Joshua rematch? Keyword rematch. I don't know, dude. It would be disappointing, especially all the stuff he talked about after Fury won. Let's just go right to it. This, that, and the third. And like I said, I'm not ripping him for saying that. I get it. But it's just funny now he's changing his tune. And it does sound like the agreement, what I mentioned about that Wilder, for the interim belt, for the vacated belt, it does sound like per agreement, like he said, that actually they would just give him the belt. Which, he's been a mandatory for a long time. I don't really have actually that big of a deal. It is what it is. But Oh, man, but it's just Al Heyman that fucks around with boxing, right? It has nothing to do with the other guys. It's just funny. It's just really funny. Because, the Fury fight would have to be a co-promotion. A major one at that, and it actually does have issues in the States. It's not this easy thing to figure out in the States. So we will get to some fight news and, of course, some boxing Twitter, but let's start breaking down what we got going on this weekend. Let's start with the big fight, heavyweight fight, very good fight. It does mean a lot, like Eddie Hearn said. Dillian Whyte, Alexander Povetkin. Whyte's been on a run of some pretty damn good contender-level fights for a while. I mean, his last performance was really bad. He looked, he was overweight, out of shape. And if you think about it, he should be respected, no doubt. No doubt about it. And I understand he's been a mandatory for a long time for the WBC, got caught up into that. But let's be honest, he did get, we could say fair or unfair offer, but he did get an offer, a somewhat sizable offer, from DAZN to fight, or in Sky Sports, I assume, to fight Joshua. He did. And to be put in the mandatory spot earlier, he did get offered a Victor Ortiz, that would have been funny, Luis Ortiz fight as well. So he did get offered fights that would have moved him in line closer, but he still got screwed around. There's just no way around it. So he's just been, doing like a workman's type, put down your head and go to work, workhorse type thing. And like I said, some of them, that Chisora fight was very close, had some really bad, the Parker moment. He's had some moments in fights. I mean, he's had some close fights, like round by round, or even troubled moments in the fights. A lot of them in the second half of the fight or at the end. And at some point, if you continue to fight like that, and maybe it is because of a lot of his competition level, right? But if you continue, my question is it's not luck, the string of luck. I'm not saying it's luck, but he has been able to overcome circumstances in the ring, and credit to him. But will that at some point come back and bite you? I mean, and I don't mean just fighting Fury or just fighting AJ or even Wilder for that, example. But on this level, Povetkin, yes, he's past his prime. Age is an issue. I don't know, man. Povetkin still got that sneaky overhand right. And the inside uppercuts, the inside punches, short punches in general. He has that little duck down to get inside because he's used to fighting taller fighters, kind of putting his head and his guard into someone's, chest. And he, that duck down, boom, overhand right comes flopping out of there, or uppercut or left hook. Or he's still a good, competitive, solid, seasoned fighter. I mean, just as good as Parker or any of these other guys, I think. Now, Parker lasted longer than Povetkin, whatever, but also Povetkin stood up and buzzed Joshua, right? I mean, he had a lot of success. Well, not a lot, but he had a fair amount of success. He probably had almost as much success as Whyte did in his fight. Now, we know Whyte got hurt in that fight. What was it, a shoulder injury? But we'll see. My point is, I mean, speaking of rights, Whyte loves to throw his big right hands, and he's got a pretty good jab, I'd say. But he usually comes ready against the legitimate opponents. Like I said, fighting Walk, he looked horrible. But the guy's got on a nice run of contender / fringe contender / solid fighters, right? And I don't know. There is something in me thinking, man, is he going to get stymied right at the doorstep of being able to get a title fight or finally having the full title or whatever the case may be, and how much that would suck for him, dude. But I do think he'll get through. There's definitely going to be some interesting moments, some vulnerable moments. Like I said, both of them have power. Both of them kind of engage. You know, it's not going to be some boring fight, that's for sure. But I could see maybe similar to how Joshua got buzzed early in the fight. I could see that happening. But like I mentioned earlier, Dillian Whyte has these moments of vulnerability, of being hurt and troubled in a fight. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what Povetkin has at this age for sure, but we know he's got something. I mean, he did it. He had enough in that fight with AJ, right, to break his nose or whatever and do some damage. You know what I mean? And he also didn't he just fight? He fought Hunter. Didn't he just fight? Was that his last fight? I can't remember. Let me double check. I think that was his last fight. Maybe I'm wrong. Nope, Michael Hunter was his last fight. And that was actually a split decision draw. I thought he actually won the fight, but it was a good fight. He beat Fury too. I forgot about that. I don't know. I just think that he's going to be in there with some issues. But look at that. Chisora, Parker. Then Oscar Rivas hadn't been really proven, but he does power. Lucas Brown, not much in that fight. Hellenius, that Chisora, that was just a war. I mean, he's fought some solid fighters, man. But I do have him winning the fight. I think that he'll get the job done. So I'm picking him. But I think if it's a knockout, I see a late knockout TKO style. But I think it'll be a clean decision, but it'll be fun while it lasts. Right now, you have Dillian Whyte sitting at a minus 345 and a plus 285, plus 265, plus 251 is the lowest that I see for Alexander Povetkin. So if you think Povetkin can land one of those big right hands and follow it up with a left uppercut or left hook, he's close to a 3-1 underdog. Another one, Persone and Taylor, she's actually over a 3-1 underdog. She's a plus 330 in some places. Some places have it closer, though. I've noticed. I have seen some like 240s, 250s plus, for Persone. I mean, I was okay with the draw. It was a really close fight. So I would actually favor Persone, but I've seen a lot of UK fight fans on my timeline or even message me when this fight got made, because it got made kind of on a surprise notion. Because remember, they were setting up the other fight, right, with Serrano, and so all of a sudden, hey, by the way, we got this fight, and it kind of seemed like Persone wasn't going to necessarily have a full camp, or if she is going to have a full camp, she didn't know she was going to get the fight. So how hard was she going for I don't know. Wasn't it like 6 weeks ago or something like that? I don't know. But I've seen enough UK fight fans that are plugged into this, and even media members that said, why I favor Taylor, I think she can probably be a little bit more, patient, little more responsible and win the fight that way, but also she was ready to fight a huge fight. And Persone, who does have a full-time career, all of a sudden, hey, by the way, you got this fight. You ready to go? Camp's already started. So I think that's actually, I know that's kind of a weak way to break it down, but honestly, I kind of favored Taylor in it anyway. I mean, in the rematch, but now that kind of is what put over the top for me. I really believe that that's how that's going to go. So I got Katie Taylor by decision. Could see a majority decision though, but I think it'll be unanimous. Then we have Alvarez and Smith Jr. Another good fight. I mean, this is probably the closest fight, it's a mid-level fight, but it's a really good fight at 175. It'll lead to some big opportunities. Right now, Alvarez is a slight favorite. You have Joe Smith Jr. at plus 160. So that's probably the highest I've seen it. I've seen it closer most of the time, but that's pretty close. Minus 200, minus 210, somewhere in that range for Alvarez. You know, you have the come-forward fighter, and you have Alvarez who can box, but it's more like he can box maybe on the outside of the pocket. He's not a guy that's always on the move. And there's sometimes where I think he likes a fight in the middle of the ring more than actually what we're talking about. You know, like Smith is going to come at him. But can Alvarez maneuver around the ring for the whole fight at this level? I mean, he was able to be in the middle of the ring and slowly walk down guys like Mccaskill and Boutte, and especially Boutte was way faded. Although it did seem like Mccaskill was faded then, but look what he's done since. Kovalev was moving on him a little bit more. Like, he kind of developed into a guy that was going to come forward, but he doesn't have a ton of power, even though against Kovalev he showed. But I got Joe Smith Jr., but I'm looking forward to this fight. This could be the fight of the weekend. I really believe that. I think that this could be the fight of the weekend. It's going to be a good fight. I have majority decision for Joe Smith Jr. Either guy has a complete argument to see who is going to win this thing, but it's going to be a good fight. I just think the work rate, the body punching, the body attack in general, and once he gets you on a rope, Joe Smith Jr. is just the guy will just terrorize you on the inside, and I think he's going to be able to get inside. I'm really excited to see Alvarez and see, is he going to be on the move from jump right out the gate? And I don't know if we've seen him against a quality opponent on the move. Like I said, he's shown us he can box to an extent at a pretty high level, but lately he's been more of a guy that comes, and I mean the last couple of years lately, he's been kind of coming forward, and I just don't know if he can the whole fight be able to get away with the things that he's going to have to do. So I'm actually going to go the minor upset. I'm actually going to go with that. I'm going with Joe Smith Jr. Majority decision. Rob Brandt is a huge favorite. He returns. Clay Collard is actually a favorite in this one. He returns on that card as well. So just a heads up on that one. Then we have, what do we got? Oh yeah, Fox card. Stay busy fight for Porter. I think he'll win by TKO or knockout. I don't know. I've seen this guy a little bit, but I've seen a couple of, I've seen like a highlight reel of him. I don't even think I've watched one full fight. So we'll see. It's a showcase fight. However, I'm into that Gallimore-Fundora fight. I mean, Fundora, they're looking like, hey, dude, you just had a tight fight not long ago. We're going to put you in there and see what you got, dude. And Gallimore, this is a chance for – he's been like one step forward, two steps back type of guy. He's got a chance to take another step forward, win a fight, and put himself in contender range again. So this is like once again, like the battle to become a contender. And I like it. I think Gallimore will win, but I do like that fight. And then they're going to do it like they did 2 weeks ago, where they won't be prelims for the FS1. It'll be a three-fight card. excuse me, on post on FS1. So whenever that fight's done, they go to that. And I know there was some in between on, well, have the other fights started? Don't worry about that, guys, because they're going to have to use the same ring. So whenever Sean Porter dispatches of this dude for Melia, sounds like, whatever. Card will start on FS1. So just a heads up there. I saw on my timeline people talking about that. Well, the other fight's going to start. It's like, nah, dude, they're in the same room. Topping that 3-fight card, though, Justin DeLoach and Levon Navarro, which is a good test. I think he's like 10-0 or 12-0, Navarro, so I like that. There's a battle of, I think they're undefeated 154-pounders, and then an 8-round fight, too, at lightweight, Paldo and Ruiz. So stay tuned for that after that. So anyway, I'm just going to kind of spend the rest of the time maybe talking a little bit more fight news. Got about 6 minutes left. And then some boxing Twitter stuff. Look at this, though. Alvarez and Smith Jr. in Canada. This is from Jim Carras, boxing. $64.99. And I remember them having to pay for a lot of stuff. It's kind of like Australia. I don't know if Australia, let me know, Australian folks, if it's still like that, but they used to have to pay for so many damn fights. I felt so bad. It's just like, damn, dude. Oh, by the way, super bantamweight champ Ray Vargas broke his leg. So he's going to be the champ in recess now. The fight that was actually going to happen, Luis Neri and Almeida, I think it was Almeida, they're going to fight for the vacant. But there will be 2 eliminators, and both winners will be mandatory. So the Daniel Roman and Juan Carlos Payano fight, which is actually on the Charlo card, I believe, and Carlos Castro and Diaz. Pitufo Diaz. So that I kind of like how if you're going to do a vacant, at least make them work for it after that too. And here's another quote from the IFL, Eddie Hearn. If Fury don't want to fight Whyte, I've already talked to AJ. He wants to be undisputed. So whoever has the title, blah, blah, blah. Does Fury get the same deal with AJ if he vacates? He's no longer world champion. It's a voluntary defense. That's just so sweet. Yildirim, this is boxing Twitter. Yildirim might be the type of opponent that Canelo would take less from DAZN for to get the WBC title. This may be the best case scenario for everyone involved except the fans. Now, it would be the best case scenario for Yildirim because of the money. But I'm still wondering about the double dip. Why would they let him double dip? There has to be something there. Keith Thurman is doing what a lot of y'all do on here, clout chase. Clout Chasers, sponsored by PBC. We just love the coattail of Fighters Wave. It's funny because if you're talking about clout chasing, Crawford's done plenty of clout chasing. And by the way, you can't clout chase somebody that has more clout. So if you say that Thurman is clout chasing Crawford, that just doesn't line up with the slang. He's more popular. He's had more exposure. He's fought better opponents. That's what it comes down to. The better dancing partner, the more popular you get. The more exposure you get, the more popular you get. So it is what it is when it comes to that. There has been a lot of talk about that on Twitter, though. It's kind of funny. Oh, here we go. Here's some real fun stuff. Showtime Boxing publishes horrible highlights of last night's fight. First, we get another suspect injury by Kaufman wailing Wallen's shoulder with his wrist. Wailing at Wallen's shoulder with a PB show similar to the way I believe Korobov was told to go easy on Eubank and should it look easy to take a dive? And should it look easy to take a dive and fake an injury? Heyman advising fighters to rob the networks and dip out early. So Kaufman was told to fake a shoulder injury. Gotcha. I'll go ahead and say it. A lot of media and fans aren't really Crawford fans. They just think he has the best chance to take down a Heyman PBC top guy in Spence because they hate what Heyman represents. I saw who was supporting me at 140, and that last part was kind of true. Just like Devin Haney, once he signed with DAZN, everyone was on him, but that wasn't the case all the time. Rolly's corners lying to him all night. That's what Ryan Garcia tweeted. Oscar De La Hoya. This day I have no idea who Rolly is. A perfect example of creating hype and not backing up. Typical PVC in Mayweather stable. Oscar said the PVC twice, and I know the B and the V are by each other, but dog, get your V's and P's figured out. As a fighter myself, I'm ashamed the Rolly guy if he thinks he won. Forget about this clown. And, basically just typical of PVC. Just goes to show PVC and Al Hammond shows are bogus. Yeah, you know what? You got your own things to figure out, Golden Boy, Oscar. Let's figure that out first. You can't even get the most popular fighter in the world to have his date, figured out for a fight, Mexican Independence Week, and he's Mexican. That's when he fights in 2 times in a row now, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, so WBC President Mauricio Suleiman has announced that if Teofimo Lopez beats Lomachenko, that he would become franchise champion. The ruling stated that if you beat a franchise champ, you only get a diamond belt. But he said Lopez would deserve a franchise. And this was a tweet about it. I hope whoever wins the fight takes the lead from Inoue after he beats Donaire and said, no thanks, fake belts need not apply. I totally agree with that. That is wonderfully said. Loma is a gun. The kid Loma has a real chance to KO him cold. Or Kid Lopez, I should say. And he gave up money to run towards the smoke. Don't ever disrespect Loma again. Hall of Famer moving towards all-time great. He's not from this era special ambition. And he is a gun either way. I'm not going to sit there. But he didn't give up a bunch of money, but I hear what he's saying, that's for sure. I think it's about to cut us off, so I'm going to get out of here. Well, I'll just let it roll. Sometimes it takes a little time to cut off, sometimes not. Here's Lukey Boxing. Shout out to Lukey Boxing. 1 week ago, people said Teofimo was avoiding Loma. Now the fight is signed. Fan is short for fanatic. Emotions is not used in this business. Emotion is not used in the business. The point is to get as much as possible. What a great fight for the sport. I favor Teofimo Lopez in this bout. What are your thoughts? It is funny how many people were even Bob Arum was just destroying him, but then ESPN stood up, got a couple of more 100,000, and it's over. You know what I mean? So it was kind of funny. Benavidez mentioned he only had 1 hour day at the hotel gym. Is that Connecticut commission rule? What were the facility rules like that in Vegas? That's just more excuses. I think we should probably shut it down here. Yeah, we're done. Peace.